Hi guys, it's Alan and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. So, last month, most of you know, I was part of the Shelf Space Reindeer Games readathon. I was the captain of Team Snow Miser. We had a resounding victory, so that was super fun. And so we read books that were all, fitting different prompts. And so I ended up reading a bunch of chunkers this month. Several, I think 4 of them were 600 pages. 4 of the dang things were 600 pages. But 3 of these reads were also in my top 5 disappointments of the year. So it was not the best reading month as far as finding new books that I really love. One of them was a reread, and so it was just... it wasn't my best reading month ever. I'm hoping that January will be a little better, though January seems to just be the month of the crippled god. I'm never going to finish it. It's so long. Oh my gosh, it's so freaking long. So, in December, I read about 3,000 pages. It comes down to about 3,000 pages, give or take. And that's, during the school year, I really can't, do a whole lot better than that. 100 pages a day is really about the ceiling that I can hit, and I usually don't hit most of that during the days in the week, and I have to get some extra on the weekend. So I don't know how to read more than 3,000 pages in a month. Maybe I'll get faster. I don't know. I can probably clear more books if I read smaller books. And so those 3,000 pages came to 6 books, 3 of which are 3-star, 1 is a 4-star, and then only 2 5 stars. My 5-star Strumpitude was retracted this month. I didn't get to give a bunch of things 5 stars. Instead, I gave 3 books, very middle of the road, 3 stars. So, without wasting any more time, let's get down to business. My first book, we will start with one of the 3 stars, and the first book on here, I lament it, and it makes me very sad. Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. So, I gave this book 3 stars, but really, this is a 2.5 star, saved by the fact that I really like political coups, military, flintlock fantasy, and the French Revolution. So the setting and the muskets and gunpowder saved this book from what is really probably a 2.5 star, because I didn't particularly enjoy reading it. There were just a lot of problems that came in. This was the Shelf Space Buddy Read for December. I was the co-host on the live show. I'm sad that I picked a book that a bunch of people didn't really love. The consensus was really just kind of meh. I know there were people who really liked it, like Lyra and Leslie and Stephanie. So I am pleased that there were people who really liked it. I am going to continue with this series because it actually takes a whole lot for me to not want to continue a series. I have to just actively dislike it. And dislike where it could ever possibly go. I'm hoping that this can go somewhere that I like. This is a book that is ostensibly about a guy named Tomas who overthrows the monarch, who is kind of representative or analogous to Louis XVI. Right before the French Revolution, there's guillotines. There are these guys called powder mages who use gunpowder. They ingest gunpowder, lick it or snort it or ingest it somehow, and they can, make a bullet go far, or they can have a musket ball curve around corners and things like that. There are other kinds of magic users in there. I'll have a full review of this up this month, but this book was just packed with too many ideas. There were too many things going on at once, too many plot threads that just appeared and then were resolved pages later. So this book just had a very strange just kind of identity problem and structure problem. It's just it never really kind of knew what to focus on, and all of the characters weren't super well drawn. I mean, the dudes were just always did you bed her? It's whatever. And there's 3 girl characters, and they have their own issues, and the characters aren't the best. I do like a couple of them, even though I wish that the book just feels very skeletal to me. This is one of the few books that I wish was longer, and I wish not that more had happened, but that they had filled in some of the meat, put more meat on the bones of this story, with that extra 100 pages or so. So, It was okay. It was okay. Like, I wouldn't tell people not to read it, but I think people knowing what it's going to be about in advance, like, this is just a victim of my, like, wildly inflated expectations because I like Flintlock fantasy and there's not enough of it around, and that, you know, it's about managing a coup. It's kind of about that, but it's not completely about that. So, that's Promise of Blood. Next on the list is the much beloved Boosh All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first novella in the Murderbot Chronicles. And again, this is also in my most disappointing books of the year video. Murderbot's fine. Like, I liked it better than Jesse. But it's just fine. Like, there was nothing that stood out. In fact, when I was going to put it in the disappointments video, like, I couldn't really remember anything that it was about. I knew it was about Murderbot, and Murderbot, that's people who love it love Murderbot, because Murderbot he doesn't want to be talked to, and he just wants to watch his soap operas. He's an introvert, and that, like, speaks to the inner introvert in all of us that doesn't want to talk to people we don't know. I get that. I totally get that, and I'm with him. But also, I also kind of want a plot that, you know, is interesting, and it's just fine. It's just a lot of fine stuff. It's like an episode of CSI Generic Planet. And so it was fine. Reading it did remind me of when my buddies and we made up this stupid thing to where if we're like my friends and I are the kind of friends that would just, like, we would all just gather at, like, someone's house and we'd just do our own thing. Like, I'd play video games and they'd play their DS, or, you know, and someone else is reading, and we just sit around and talk when we want to. But if we wanted to, like, insult each other, we would just, I don't know where it came from, but we would just go, "You are a stupid idiot," and we would blame the, like, "Oh, Jerkbot," like, we invented this, like, fake robot called Jerkbot, and that's how you could insult your friends without insulting them, because you could just say mean things. "You are terrible at Halo and should not play this game ever," and if someone was like, "Alan," you're like, no, it wasn't me, that was Jerkbot. And they go, "Jerkbot, we gotta kick him out of here." So that's a stupid story. That's a stupid story, but it's all true. Like, we used to do it all the time. And the voice you use, it has to be like the Ventrilo voice, if you ever were on Ventrilo, when they, you know, pop in like, "Pontifex has left the server." That's Jerkbot's voice. I don't know the purpose of that story, except that reading Murderbot, like, that's how I picture Murderbot talking. "I don't want to talk to you, you idiot." So, Murderbot's fine. Murderbot's fine. I'm going to keep reading him. I'm not really in a rush to keep reading him, because unlike Promise of Blood, the premise isn't, like, propelling me forward. So I do want to read them, maybe kind of as a palate cleanser, something really short that I just want to read in between one of these big honkin' books. So I will continue. I just don't know when. It's just a kind of a sci-fi romp that, you know, is fine. It's fine. Murderbot's fine. I gave it 3 stars. Next on the disappointment list and the 3-star Shinkansen is Boosh, The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So I don't think The Burning God is an objectively bad book. Like, a lot of people like The Burning God, and I understand why they like it. To me, I was just so invested in the war and in what was happening on the country of Nakan, and I just expected a kind of different conclusion. Yes, I know who Rin is based on and the kind of what the history is based on, and so I knew kind of the general direction it was going to take, but it just didn't do what I expected it to do or what I wanted it to do. This book has a lot of Rin, and it's a lot of Rin kind of flying solo. So there's not even a lot of these other kind of secondary characters that we bounce off of as much as we do in those first 2 books. And I just, like, I don't like Rin. That's well known, but I've liked the books up to this point. I didn't hate this book. This book is 3 stars for me easily. It wasn't bad, and I didn't hate reading it, and it read really quickly. There were just parts that seemed to drag, other parts that happened way too quickly that needed to be expanded on, and some plot threads that it seemed, especially with the precision focus of the Poppy War, and just the breakneck pace of the Dragon Republic. This book just kind of seemed all over the place in both focus and pace. It was like fast in parts and then really slow in parts, and then it just kind of went here and went there as if Kwong, between writing Poppy War and writing this one, just kind of changed her mind about where she wanted to go with it. So it was disappointing for me. It wasn't bad. I think most people are going to like this and do like this. I just didn't love it as a conclusion to what was one of my favorite series of the year. And so I gave this one 3 stars as well. I'll have a full review for this one coming out this month as well. So moving in to my 4-star read, that is Boosh, The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. So this is a self-published book. This was actually Shelf Space buddy read for November, and our live show was in December, so I started this at the very end of November, and so read the majority of it at the beginning of December. And this book, I will have a full review of this one as well. December, I don't know why, I didn't do any reviews, but they're coming back, so don't worry. I've just got a stack of like 5 books that I need to give reviews to. There's one coming out for this one. But The Sword of Kaigen, if you don't know about all the other people who have Sword of Kaigen reviews out, The Sword of Kaigen is about this strip of land called the Sword of Kaigen that has this Japanese-inspired people, this very traditional kind of like pre-Meiji restoration Japanese culture. And it is about the horrors of war, it is about grief, it's about loss, it's about family. The main character is Misaki, and she is the mother, she is the matriarch of this little family, and she's the mother figure, and she has 4 kids, one of whom is kind of like warrior age, and she has a very, very cold and callous, like blocking off husband named Takeru. And the family dynamic of that is almost, not quite, is almost better than the war stuff. This book could have been one of my favorite books of all time. The middle 300 pages of The Sword of Kaigen is some of the best pages I read in 2020. I have not seen someone as adept at writing evocative battles and fight scenes and just like grabbing you by the throat and just tearing you forward. The middle 300 pages of this book were so fantastic and so thrilling and, blood pumping and anxiety inducing and, heartbreaking and grief-ridden and just realistic portrayals of love and loss and violence, and it was just so good, so good. So good. But because M.L. Wong tried to tie this into she has a young adult series that she was writing. She's not writing it anymore. She's just kind of discontinued the series. Because she tried to tie it into this young adult series that takes place in the more modern part of the world. The whole world isn't kind of stuck in that 1600s feudal Japan stage that Kaigen is. It's much more modernized. There's like cell phones and everything everywhere else. Every time she tried to tie it into the larger narrative, for example, her other books are about like the children of some of the characters in this book. And so every time that tried to tie in, it just seems so ham-fisted and so forced and so tacked on. I hated it. Like, most people were able to look past it. I hated every minute of it. Guys, I hated it. One minute I'm in feudal Japan and the next I'm in a freaking CW superhero show. It's like the 3rd season of Arrow. And it was not my favorite. But the middle 300 pages were so good that it kept it at a 4 stars because, guys, those some of the best pages I read all year. I have more to say in my full review that'll be coming later this month as well. Now, my first of the 5-star books, we have Boosh, Malice by John Gwynne, book 1 of the Faithful and the Fallen series. So, over at World Hoppers, Andy organized a World Hopper Secret Santa where we, our secret recipient, or our secret child, as Michael informed me, we research one of their favorite book and then we read it and we film a video about it. And I'm so glad that I got Leslie and was able to read Malice, because this, as I've said before, was not a book that I was going to pick up right away because of its Vikingness. Yes, Professor Chase. If you have not seen Philip Chase's review on Malice, you absolutely should. It's fantastic. But he reiterates strongly that this is not about Vikings. It is in fact about Celts. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. But look at this picture. Look at this picture of a Celt right here. When I look at that, I would not be like, oh, that's a Celt. I'd be like, it's a Viking. That's a Viking. So for me, Viking is a catch-all term for all northern bearded warlike people. So I'm just gonna say Vikings. Just know it's also Celts. Hashtag not Vikings. It's so good. It feels very classical, but without being like slow and densely worded the way other classics are. John Gwynne does not like heap a description of people or places upon you. You better use your imagination to figure out what these people like. Here's a spoiler alert. They all have beards and they all have dark hairs. One dude's got red hair. Everybody else, dark hair, beards. Done. You know what they look like now? Good. Anyway, this is kind of like a chosen one and an anti-chosen one, and there's a prophecy, and it is kind of, there's the political maneuverings of kind of your Game of Thrones with a classic feel of kind of like a Lord of the Rings or Eye of the World, without the Trollocs. And so it just feels very familiar while doing different things with what we expect from those tropes that we know and love. And the back half of this book is just, must be this tall to ride because it's going to go on the roller coaster. So good. Oh my gosh, so good. So good. Guys, I love war. I love it when I love military engagements. I love army facing army. I love betrayal. I love like standing up for what's right. Oh, it was just such a wild ride. I have heard from nearly everyone. In fact, I don't think anyone has told me that Malice is better than any of the subsequent books. So I have heard nothing other than the fact that Malice is the weakest of the four, and that makes me so incredibly excited to read Valor later this month. And my final 5-star book was in fact a reread, and I knew it was going to be 5 stars because I read it before, and that is Ka-Chunk, Jingo by Terry Pratchett. This is book 4 in the City Watch series, which you know is my favorite of the Discworld sub-series. So Jingo, once again we have the City Watch. Jingo is about an island that rises from the sea in between the nation of Clatch, which is kind of a stand-in for the Middle East, and Ankh-Morpork, which is our London analogy. And there are 2 fishermen who are fishing for the curious squid, and there's an Ankh-Morpork fisherman and a Clatchian fisherman, and they both end up at the island at the same time, and they both claim it in the name of their respective countries, and lo and behold, we have war, and the 2 nations go to war over the spit of land, and that's kind of the backdrop of the mystery involved in Jingo. Now, the mystery in Jingo is the attempted assassination of a diplomat from one of these countries, and Commander Vimes, as he does, is going to find out who is trying to spark and fuel and fan the fires of war. So this book is very, very timely because it is very, very much talking about nationalism and kind of the illogic behind just blind patriotism that we have on both the Ankh-Morporkian and the Clatchian side. It is about the people who actually profit when wars happen. It's also about the people who choose to fight for their countries and their relationship with the people who choose to fight for the opposing country, and about how kind of the feelings of soldiers on the ground versus the feelings of the people sending them onto the battle. And aside from all of that thematic talk, this book features very heavily with the patrician Vimes, Nabi and Colin, Angua and Carrot. So some of the more minor characters are kind of sidelined in this one in favor of most of the original Watch, which I really liked. Colin and Nabi in particular, just 2 everymen that have no particular skills and have no particular intelligence, just doing their best. And you see, and through Nabi and Colin, you just kind of see what the average person thinks of foreign nations that the country is at war with. And yeah, it's jingoistic and, you know, kind of xenophobic. But you love Colin and Nabi, and they just don't know any better. And you just know if you could just sit them down and have like a reasonable conversation and dispel some of the things that they've been told, that, you know, they would understand and just be more enlightened individuals. I wanted to read one, just concerning Colin, I did want to read one of my favorite things talking about Colin, where they're talking about, so they're you know, they're gonna get a war. It's near the beginning. No, won't last long. "Law cowards, the Clatchians," said Colin. "The moment they taste a bit of cold steel, they're legging it away over the sand." Sergeant Colin had had a broad education. He'd been to the school of, my dad always said, the college of It Stands to Reason, and was now a postgraduate student at the University of What Some Bloke in the Pub Told Me. And isn't that just the way of the world? So it's great to see them. Nobby especially is in rare form in this book. And then Commander Vimes, we learn about how Commander Vimes, it is about the chase. And you may be able to take Vimes out of the watch house and, you know, put him with the upper crust, but you cannot take the Watchman out of Vimes. And Vimes, wherever there's a criminal running, Vimes is going to chase them. So Jingo, once again, Pratchett touches on these hot button issues, these kind of like larger, just these larger cultural issues, while couching it in just a great mystery cop story that is hilarious to boot. If you are not yet reading Discworld, what are you waiting for? Come join our Discworld cult. Pick it up. So good. So good. So guys, that's it for me and the books I read in December. What was your favorite read of December? Thank you guys for watching. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description, and I will see you guys next time.